Chapter 7, The Rescue. When Caroline first hit the water, the shock made her suck in her breath. She was in the river. She was being swept away. Except for the puffy jacket, which ballooned up around her neck like a life preserver, the rest of her clothes were filling with water and dragging her down. For the first 60 seconds or so, she was utterly terrified. Then one foot scraped along the bottom, and she realized she could probably walk out if she really tried. But why try? The water was cold, not icy, and she felt sure she could stand it for another 5 minutes anyway. She was fascinated to see Beth and Eddie running along the bank, screaming for her to hand them the pole. The pole? The butterfly net? She tried to turn her head to find the pole, but only the net was visible, and even it seemed to be slowly sinking. Now Jake and Josh and Wally were tumbling down the bank, running toward Beth and Eddie, yelling for Caroline to stand up, but all the while she was being carried farther and farther downstream toward the road bridge, where the river turned. She would soon be out of sight. Was this the moment she had been waiting for ever since they moved to Buckman? The start of her glorious career? She summoned all her concentration on the plot that was unfolding before her and tried to adopt a look of terror and despair. Oh, was this the end? Would she never be on Broadway? Was the name Caroline Lenore Malloy never to be in lights on a marquee? She tried to look desperate. She tried to look pitiful. No, she had to live. She managed a fake sob and began to flail her arms just as she was bonked on the forehead by a limb floating downriver beside her. She was able to drape one arm over the limb, and she felt her foot scrape the bottom. Caroline was an excellent swimmer, so she had never been afraid of water. She had just never been in water with all her clothes on. This could be her finest hour. Her name would be in all the papers along with her picture. On the front page of the Buckman Herald, beneath the banner, Caroline Rescued, readers would see the almost lifeless form of a young girl, one limp arm draped over a branch, her beautiful hair spread out over the surface of the water, her face pale, her eyes closed. Her white skin would make readers cry. Her blue lips would bring a sob to their throats. Her eyelids fluttered a moment. Were newspaper photos in color? Oh, they had to be. It would be so much more dramatic if she was in color. Her teeth chattered, but as long as she had a limb to hang on to, she wasn't about to take off her jacket and swim. And she certainly wasn't going to ruin the drama by simply standing up and walking out of the river. No, she would at least let it carry her around to the other side of Island Avenue and hope that a crowd would be waiting. She could see her sisters and the Hatford boys back on the bank, trying to get beyond the tangle of brush and bushes blocking their path. She looked around in dismay. Where was the photographer? Why weren't there people standing on the road bridge calling down to her to have courage? Where were the sirens, the police, the fire department? Could it possibly be that for this, her best performance yet, there was to be no audience at all? No applauding when she was rescued? No encore? Caroline waved her free hand weakly in the air. Help! Help! She cried as tragically as she could. Please, won't someone save me? Another car went by on the bridge up ahead, but didn't stop. This is ridiculous, thought Caroline. There was no point being in rushing water if no one was around to appreciate it. What would an actress do if she was in a play and nobody came? Well, if she was ever in a movie and the script called for her to be washed aboard, she would remember how cold and clammy clothes felt against her body, how her wet hair clung to the side of her face. Bam, bump! Her bottom banged against a rock beneath the surface. Ow! She cried. Help! She said pitifully. Oh, somebody save me, please! A swell of water filled her mouth and flooded her face as she was carried around the bend in the river. Maybe she should just try to stand up and wade out. She passed through the shadow of the road bridge and moved along the opposite side of Island Avenue. If she wasn't rescued soon, the whole scene would have been for nothing. She was facing upstream now, the current turning her first one way then the other, and in that moment, looking back toward the bridge, she saw a car stop. She saw a woman get out and run to the bridge railing. The woman was holding a cell phone to her ear, and Caroline felt sure she was calling 911. Yes, an audience at last! And just in time, too, because her wet clothes felt like cement around her body and her teeth were chattering. Another swell of water caught her in the mouth, and the current spun her around again. And there, up ahead, she saw a wall of people in purple parkas and blue ski jackets. 5 children and 2 men were standing waist deep in the water with their hands locked together as Caroline came bumping and bobbing along. Here she comes, she heard Eddie yell. Caroline, can't you stand up? A man called, Don't let her slip between you. "Goodbye, cruel world," Caroline cried. The next thing she knew, she was turning face down as she bumped against Jake Hatford's legs, and then she opened her eyes and saw a big burly man charging through the river toward her, water spraying around him as he grabbed her jacket, then her arm, and hauled her through the water toward the bank. The other men herded the rest of the kids after them. They all collapsed on the bank with their chest heaving. Caroline opened one eye just enough to see a rescue vehicle with its lights flashing up on Island Avenue. "You kids are lucky we were coming by just now. Why didn't one of you go call 911? "There wasn't time. We hoped someone would see us and call the fire department," Beth said. Caroline realized why Beth was going along with the act, to divert the boys' attention from what the girls had been doing down the river. A siren sounded in the distance, but a man from the rescue vehicle was already running toward the little group on the bank. The burly man who had pulled Caroline out turned to the others. "You kids better get on some dry clothes," he said. "Never mind the others," Caroline was thinking. "What about me, the almost drowned?" As a fire engine stopped on the road above, Caroline rolled over on her back with her arms outstretched. "What have you got?" a fireman yelled. "A girl was in the river, but we pulled her out." "What about the other kids? They helped rescue her. We're all okay, I think." Then another car door slammed, and Caroline heard Mr. Hatford's voice. "Don't tell me." "Yep, Tom. Looks like it's your boys again. I don't know if they hunt for trouble or trouble hunts for them, but this time they were the rescuers, I hear. Got a girl who fell in the river, but they're all okay." "Who was it?" And all three pointed at Caroline. The rescue worker was kneeling beside Caroline. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" She didn't answer. "Are you okay?" No answer. "If she was in the river, she probably got bounced around a little," Mr. Hatford suggested. "Looks like she got a bump there on her forehead. Can you tell me your name?" "Juliet," she whispered. Jake and Josh and Wally and Eddie and Beth all stared. "Juliet what?" "Shakespeare." "Caroline, do you know what year it is?" 1564. "Caroline," the Hatford said. "Hit her on the head again, Mr. Hatford," said Eddie. "I think you'll discover she's fine." "How did this happen?" "We saw Caroline fall in the river and couldn't reach her. She had hold of a limb, so we ran around to the other side of Island Avenue to catch her when she came by here. We flagged down these men on the road to help us," said Wally. "Good thinking. But next time, have somebody call 911. You kids were lucky today, but you never know about a river. If we hadn't gotten a call from a woman on the bridge, or these men hadn't happened along, no telling how this day might have ended." "Where do you live?" he asked the girls. "We'll get you home." "No," Eddie said quickly, not wanting her parents to see the ruckus they had caused. "We're in that white house right down there. We'll walk. Come on, Caroline." She and Beth pulled the younger sister to her feet, and water oozed from their clothes. "I'll follow along behind them," Mr. Hatford told them. "What were you doing so close to the water in the first place?" "Yeah, Eddie, what were you guys doing down by the river with a butterfly net?" said Jake. But Caroline interrupted. "Is this London? Am I on Drury Lane?" "Caroline, hush," said Beth. And without a word, the boys, she and Eddie grabbed their sister by the arms and led her home. Chapter 8 is called Conversation with Caroline, and we'll read that in the next video.